This is Barry McKnight, the voice of the Troy Trojans. You're tuned in to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast.
One, Bruce Pearl has retired from Auburn's men's basketball. Number two, did the referees cost Auburn against Oklahoma? And three, can the Auburn Tigers rebound and beat the Texas A&M Aggies for 2 years in a row? What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am Phillip Jordan, in studio host and producer of Dothan football on 96.9 The Legend. Also cover Auburn at the Auburn Wire with USA Today. We have a jam-packed show today. Got some great guests. Lance Griffin from the Game Plan in Dothan on 100.1 FM WOOF. He will be here to talk about Bruce Pearl, Auburn-Oklahoma, and some big matchups in the SEC. And then we'll also be joined by Cameron Ohnysty. He is the Aggies Wire lead writer, and also check him out on Texas A&M Live, voice of college football. And I'm going to give my thoughts to open up the show as well. I did not think we'd be talking hoops here on the show this week, but here we are, Bruce Pearl announcing his retirement. And before we jump into the lead, let you guys know where you can find me in the podcast. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. If you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater or probably an Alabama fan. You can also check out the show over at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. The Oklahoma-Auburn preview, by the way, did great last week over there. 500 views, a lot of interaction on that video. You can also email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. All right, let's talk about it. Bruce Pearl retiring from Auburn's men's basketball. I think we all kind of felt like this was coming soon, maybe in a couple years, a year or two, maybe we get one more year. But to get it on Monday, and I'm sitting there kind of watching some Texas A&M highlights, getting ready. Auburn's game this weekend, getting ready for my interview with Cameron to talk about the Aggies, and then on my phone, I get a notification, Bruce Pearl retiring, but it kind of went and came pretty quickly, and I was like, maybe I just saw something that's just not right. So I jump on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and that's true. Bruce Pearl is retiring. Stephen Pearl, his son, will take over as head coach of the Auburn Tigers. That one, I think, also is one of them things where we saw coming. It had been, to me, obvious that he was being groomed to take over as the head coach there at Auburn. I mean, you've been seeing a lot of stuff with Stephen Pearl last couple of years, doing a lot more of the media stuff that you normally would see Bruce Pearl do. I think a lot of it was Bruce Pearl was still do the national stuff, but there was some local stuff you were seeing Stephen Pearl do. He's been in this program. The staff is intact. A lot of these players are going to trust Stephen Pearl. I mean, he was involved with a lot of these guys coming to Auburn and with them getting going with practice and all that stuff. But for Bruce Pearl, 11 seasons there at Auburn, 246 and 125 is his record. 3 SEC regular season titles, 2 SEC tournament titles, 2 Final Fours. Of course, lost to Florida this past year to his old protege, to one of his former assistants, and Todd Golden. And what Pearl has done for this program is beyond Auburn. It's for the state, really. Auburn was, if not the worst, one of the worst programs of any big-time conferences in college basketball. Obviously, they were one of the worst programs in the SEC. The Jeff Lebo, Tony Barbie era. I mean, we can all forget that one. And just kind of the change. And it took a few years. It took a few years for him to kind of get Auburn going in that right direction. But once he did, Auburn really took off. 2019, kind of surprised team, got hot end of the year, won the SEC tournament, powered through some blue bloods in college basketball. Of course, lost to Virginia in the Final Four. Controversial fashion. So we're kind of used to lately some controversy with Auburn athletics. And then this past year, 2025, just a terrific team. The number one overall seed, Janiyah Broome, runner-up for Player of the Year. Some people say he should have got Player of the Year. Auburn was most of the season the best team in college basketball. Just ran into a hot Florida team at the time. But anyways, did things at Auburn that had never been done. And then where I want to go beyond that, I don't think Alabama takes basketball as seriously if Auburn does it. When Auburn hired Bruce Pearl, I remember listening to radio shows. The Alabama fans were upset. They felt like Alabama should have went and got Bruce Pearl. Now they couldn't say Auburn can't one up Alabama. We got to go get our guy. And then they went and got Avery Johnson. Didn't work out in the long run, but then it gets you to Nate Oates. And then what Nate Oates has done at Alabama as one of the best programs in the country. So now I've just seen the state of Alabama become a basketball state. Look, football will always be number one in Alabama. I know that. Everybody knows that. But now basketball has gotten closer to it. Never will top it. But honestly, the Alabama-Auburn games in basketball the last few years have been bigger. That's, partly because Auburn has been mediocre at best in football. But still, what he's done, tremendous for Bruce Pearl. If you're an Auburn person, Auburn fan, you kind of wish he would still be there, for another year or two. But you kind of saw this coming. A lot of people thought maybe a potential Senate run. He squashed that on Monday of happening. So he's going to be retired. He's going to be an ambassador for Auburn. And this is not an interim situation either with Stephen Pearl. He signed a 5-year contract with Auburn, so he is the head coach. And here's my thing with Stephen Pearl, and this is not going to be me doubting him. This is just kind of my thoughts on the situation. I think on the floor, coaching, I think he's going to do a tremendous job. He's learned from his dad. He's also going to throw his own kind of personality with it. My concern, or something I just want to see how it plays out, the recruiting side, because Bruce Pearl was good in the PR department for Auburn. He was good at promoting the program. How will Stephen Pearl be with that? That's one thing I want to sit back and see with this. But it's going to be interesting with this team. They have a talented team. Just a lot of players. Only one player returning from last year's team, and that's Tahad Pettiford, who should be one of the best, if not the best, point guards, especially in the SEC, but nationally be one of the best too. They have a lot of new players. This is a talented team. I think this is going to be a more versatile team than they were last year from the players they have, but how they mold together is going to be interesting. Now, and one thing, when Bruce Pearl was the head coach, you kind of felt like, okay, these guys will come together as the season goes on. So that will be a challenge for Stephen Pearl and the staff. The Auburn losing to Oklahoma, so you thought that would be the open of the show, which it would have been if the Bruce Pearl news didn't hit. And honestly, this podcast coming on Tuesday, originally this show was going to come out on Wednesday, but with the Bruce Pearl stuff, that's big news. We had to get the show out. Auburn losing to Oklahoma 24-17. Now, last week on the show, and also our predictions over at the Auburn Wire, I predicted Auburn to win this game 24-21. Came close. Now, I'm going to say this. Now, this is not the only reason why Auburn lost, but it was a contributing factor to Auburn losing on Saturday, and that is the officiating. I'm not Mr. Complain about referees guy. That's not usually something I do a lot of. I'm going to do it here. This was one of the worst examples of officiating I have ever seen in big-time college football. First, you start off with the Kayan Lee fumble recovery for a touchdown called back. That was a catch. That was a fumble. Auburn should have had a score there. And here's my thing on the whole play. I don't think you can look at the video and look at that and say, hey, he fumbled the ball. He didn't fumble the ball. He didn't catch it. I just think it was inconclusive. I mean, you see everything. So it's kind of a weird thing to say, I know. But I just feel like that play was not conclusive enough for fumble or, to reverse the fumble call. And I think that should have been kept on Auburn's favor. They should have had a touchdown there. That was a big moment in the game. Yes, it was early. Auburn gets that fumble recovered for a touchdown. They go up 7-0. That's a big momentum play. And that really could have shaken Oklahoma to a degree, even though they were at home. Of course, we saw the pass interference. I don't know what these referees are looking at, or they're not looking. One was running away from the play. We saw that. And then also the touchdown to put them at 10-3, which that followed a mishap on special teams. We'll get back to special teams here in a second. But the Isaiah Satega touchdown should not have happened. It should have been a 15-yard penalty. They were pretending to substitute. He runs. He's wide open. Touchdown, Oklahoma. That should have been a 15-yard penalty. Oklahoma, at best, in that situation, should have had a field goal attempt. That should not have been a touchdown. So those were some calls that really went against Auburn. Look, Auburn also shot their own selves in the foot several times in the game, so I'm not putting all of this on the referees, but that was some bad officiating in this game. The offensive line was an issue for Auburn. 10 sacks allowed. There was 13 TFLs. Jackson Arnold won. I'll say this, and I kind of had some conversations with people on social media after the game. He did hold on to the ball too long. And I saw an example of this against South Alabama. There was a play, I believe it was in the second half, maybe into the first half. But anyways, Cam Coleman had one-on-one coverage down the sideline, and Jackson Arnold did not pull the trigger. Now, the thing with that is you're going to get South Alabama. No disrespect. But at the same time, give a shot. We saw Saturday against Oklahoma what Cam Coleman can do if he's got one-on-one coverage. He can go get the football, throw it up to him, and give him an opportunity. If you're Jackson Arnold, he has got to learn to wrist the ball. I just wonder, is he worried he's going to make a mistake, turn the ball over, and then Hugh Freeze is going to pull him? I mean, yeah, if he gets careless with it, that's one thing, but you got to just be able to sometimes just sling it and let it go and just not see what happens, but give your receivers an opportunity to make a play, especially when you've got receivers like Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. Something else that was missing from Saturday from Auburn, and this is another reason why I think they hurt themselves, they had a big 40-yard run for Jeremiah Cobb in the second half. That was pretty much it. Now, you weren't going to run the ball as successful against Oklahoma as you had against other teams, against Baylor, against Ball State, against South Alabama. But you had to try it. You had to at least give Oklahoma the thought that we're going to run the game in the traditional running game with the running backs. We didn't see a lot of that. Damari Alston, he didn't get a lot of carries. Jeremiah Cobb should be running back one. So this week against Texas A&M, I really hope Auburn does more of that, uses the traditional running game. I think that would be very important for them in that game. I'll get my pick for that game later on in the show. But I also say this. Let's be positive. I think Jackson Arnold did some good things at times. He used his feet, and he did make some throws down the field. Now, I'm going to defend Jackson Arnold for a little bit. There's a throw in the game where he missed Cam Coleman, one of them. And it's where a little short, Cam Coleman looked like he was going to be open. He probably would have scored. But the thing about it, and you heard Greg McElroy talk about it during the broadcast, Cam Coleman stopped running. If Cam Coleman just keeps running, I think he catches it. I think Jackson Arnold is on the money, and Auburn gets a touchdown. So that's my thoughts with that. Defensively, I thought Auburn did a good job against John Mateer, keeping them inside the pocket, showing containment. Look, he did score what was the game-winning touchdown, but before that, they didn't really have too much issue with him running, and I think they did a good job most of the game, unless, when the referees let stuff go, like that touchdown earlier we talked about. I think they did a good job of keeping the receivers in front of them. So I think the Auburn defense played well. They tackled well. They did cause there were some turnovers in the game, so Auburn had some opportunities. But I think that side played well. Special teams hurt them. The Hudson Kayak, bad snap. And look, I'm an Auburn writer. I probably mispronounced his name. So any people listening or watching this ready to jump on me on social media, get over it. Okay. Anyways, the punter bad snap. He didn't handle it well. That turnover, that just gave Oklahoma great position that, results in that touchdown, but put the defense in a bad spot. The Malcolm Simmons, when he caught the punt inside the 5, you can't do that. You got to let it go, because that would have been a touchback. Auburn was inside the 5 right there at the goal line. Then a missed field goal by Connor Gibbs, and that just gave Oklahoma good field position. So that's kind of like my thoughts on the game. I know I sound really negative. I think Auburn had opportunities, and I really came away from that game feeling like Auburn was the better team. Auburn should have won the game, but stuff they can't control. The referees just completely whiffing on some calls. But then on the other side, they did some stuff too. Didn't commit to the run game. The offensive line had issues. The penalties, the sacks, Jackson Arnold holding on to the ball too long. I think these are all fixable things for Auburn, particularly Jackson Arnold getting rid of the ball. And that's another thing. Deja vu from what Gus Malzahn used to do. Everybody's running deep. There's no intermediate routes that I could remember seeing. It's something for Jackson Arnold to go to when the pressure was coming in. He had to have an outlet to get the ball out to. That was one thing too I noticed. But I think the defense played fantastic. I'm interested how they play this week against Texas A&M. One more piece of news before we jump into the guest interviews. Permanent opponents revealed. So Auburn will have Alabama, Georgia. We knew those two was going to be there. And the speculation had been Vanderbilt, and it will be Vanderbilt. So over the next 4 years, these will be Auburn's 3 permanent opponents. Now, for Auburn, you're probably hoping Diego Pavia is gone after this year, which Auburn will have to play him. But that's the 3 opponents. I'm sure we're going to have the same spot. Alabama last. Georgia will be somewhere in October. We'll see where Vanderbilt goes. And that's going to be – I'm real excited about the 9-game conference schedule when we get that going. All right, now we're going to play the guest interviews. First up will be Lance Griffin from the Game Plan. And then after that, Cameron Ohnysty from Aggies Wire and Texas A&M Live, voice of college football. All right, my first guest this week on the show is Lance Griffin. Check him out Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on WOOF FM 100.1 here in my neck of the woods in Dothan, Alabama. And Lance, I appreciate you coming on the show. I do not know what we're talking about today.
Oh, heavens. I mean, thank you for asking me on a day like today. We're not going to want for anything, any conversation, that's for sure.
No. We will fill this segment of the show pretty easily with full-on Auburn content. And, we are at this point in September and I did not think I would be leading a guest with basketball.
I know.
But we're recording this on Monday evening. So on Tuesday, everybody would have seen the news. But obviously the news dropping, Bruce Pearl is retiring. His son, Stephen Pearl, is going to be taking over. He signed a 5-year contract. No interim status here. He is the head coach. He's not the interim head coach. I think, Lance, this is something we all kind of saw in the future happening. I think for a lot of people, maybe people were thinking maybe just one more year and he would, step down and Stephen Pearl would take over. But did it catch you off guard when the news dropped on Monday?
It did. Certainly. I think it probably did everyone, at least the timing of it. The first day of practice, he had made some comments a month or so ago that made it sound like maybe he was going to put the Senate run on the back burner and stick it out with Auburn at least another year. Well, when the announcement came, pretty much everyone, including me, thought, okay, he's going to turn around and run for Senate. And he pretty much said today that he was not, today being Monday. And so now I think really this was about trying to set up Stephen to be as successful as he can be right off the bat. I think he knows he's got a pretty good roster this year. And you never know what your roster is going to look like next year. You can do everything right and still have a lot of roster turnover. But I think Bruce Pearl feels good about this roster. And so he probably has been in some discussions with Auburn for the last couple of months, probably to try to get things in place for this and put him, Stephen, where he can be the most successful.
With the Stephen Pearl side of it, do you have any concerns? Because obviously this is a guy that's just been an assistant under his dad. That's his coaching experience. Obviously played at Tennessee under him as well, but he's been there, since 2017. He's been right there. And it just feels like Bruce Pearl has been grooming Stephen for this role, because I've noticed lately that Stephen Pearl's been doing a lot of the media appearances that normally you would see the head coach do, going on radio shows and other stuff. So Bruce Pearl wasn't doing as many of those. And obviously, I know he was more of the defensive guy. Burgermaster is the offensive guy. I was trying to explain to somebody today, like it's a weird thing. You don't see an offensive and defense coordinator in basketball, but Auburn has it or had it. What is your confidence level or just feeling about Stephen Pearl, the head coach?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting dynamic because on one hand, Bruce Pearl has elevated this Auburn program to where a coaching vacancy is a coveted job. Auburn could go out on the open market and hire a really good basketball coach that has experience, head coaching experience, successful head coaching experience at a high level. And so there might be some eyebrow raising about why don't you do that? And if you still think Stephen Pearl is the right guy, then hire Stephen Pearl. But on the other hand, nobody knows this system better than Stephen Pearl if it's not Bruce Pearl. He has been in this program. He is as entrenched in the Auburn way as Bruce Pearl is. They go hand in hand. So the transition is a very important thing in college basketball now, because if you go out and get another coach, all of these guys committed to the Bruce Pearl system, and if you went out and got another guy on the open market, you're probably having to build your roster from scratch again. So on one hand, you would think, yeah, I'd like to see them go out and hire an experienced coach with a lot of head coaching ability. And then on the other, I sit there and go, no, this kind of makes sense for Auburn. And if it doesn't, Phillip, I mean, they 5 years. So he needs to win, and he needs to win early. And I think that's why Bruce Pearl made the decision he made today.
Yeah, and I feel like with the roster they have in place, and that's another thing, doing this, you keep your roster intact. You don't have to maybe worry about guys leaving. I mean, Todd Pettiford coming back.
I say you lock it in. I do believe, because there is a coaching change, I do believe there is a transfer window in basketball as well. But because of the transition to Stephen, I don't know that you'll see any turnover.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, did the players kind of know this was coming way before we did?
Probably. It would not surprise me. I heard that the team was being informed today, kind of when the news broke, but there may have been some hints. At the very least, Bruce giving Stephen more responsibility, more rapport with the team, so that this transition is as smooth as it can be.
And look, Stephen Pearl may be responsible for the Final Four run Auburn had. The comments he made after the Alabama State game in the first round about, he didn't mention any players, but I think we all kind of knew who he was pointing his fingers at.
Yep.
And Auburn played a lot different in the tournament after he said what he said
no doubt.
Last year, calling some guys out.
Yeah, I think obviously Auburn has been very good on both sides of the ball. They've been very good defensively for the most part when players are bought in, just like you were just saying. So from that standpoint, you would think that there's still a lot of success, but there's something that's in the back of my mind, Phillip. I don't know about you. There's something in the back of my mind that Bruce Pearl just had something that most other coaches don't have. And I don't know if we're just buying into charisma or what, but he had the mix that worked both from an X's and O's standpoint and from a sell the university standpoint. I wouldn't blame Stephen if he couldn't duplicate that, but you do wonder in the back of your mind, is he going to be able to continue to have this program on the level that it is now?
Yeah, I think that's my one, not really concerned, just kind of like wait and see with him. I think the on the court X's and O's part, he should be okay. I think he'll have that part down, just being around Bruce and just being around the game as long as he has.
Yep.
The recruiting and, like you said, being really, Bruce Pearl was the PR for the basketball team.
Absolutely.
Just the way he would just go out and promote the program and just go wherever. If he got asked to go on TV to be an analyst for anything, he would do it.
And
that's one thing.
Good.
Yeah, so that's the outgoing part of it. That's kind of where I wonder where Stephen Pearl is going to be able to excel at that. And just talking about Bruce Pearl, 11 seasons in Auburn, 3 regular season titles, 2 SEC tournament titles, 2 Final Four appearances. And I actually got to say this: if he's going to go out, and the way Bruce Pearl, you just kind of feeling the person he is, he's kind of probably got to be happy if he's going to go out with a loss that it was against Todd Golden, one of his former assistants at Florida. But it's, to me, Lance, I feel like Bruce Pearl did not just change the climate of basketball at Auburn. I think he changed the state, because I don't think Alabama goes out and gets Avery Johnson, which was not a successful hire at the end of the day, but then that led you to Nate Oates. I think Bruce Pearl changed basketball in the state of Alabama. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought, although Avery Johnson was not successful in the long run, I do think he elevated the platform for Alabama basketball that did allow the Nate Oates hire to happen. But that was kind of lightning in a bottle. I didn't know anything about Nate Oates at the time, but Alabama did not want to cede basketball to Auburn, and nor does Auburn want to cede it to Alabama in basketball or anything else. So Bruce Pearl was available at just the right time. And correct me if I'm wrong, Phillip, I believe that was a Jay Jacobs hire. And he got an awful lot of criticism during his time at Auburn, but he went out and took a bit of a risk. Bruce Pearl had a show cause on him, and I don't think he was officially hired until that show cause came off, but the wheels were in motion. A lot of programs would have loved to have had Bruce Pearl, but were a little skittish to hire him, and Jay Jacobs went ahead and did it, and it's the best thing that's happened for Auburn athletics since Pat Dye.
Yeah, turned to an everything school as Bruce Pearl kind of got famous. Jumping into football, obviously nothing to talk about what happened this weekend in Auburn-Oklahoma, losing 24-17, close game. There a lot of controversies around that Auburn-Oklahoma game, and not just from the Auburn side thing. I think nationally people are saying Auburn got a raw deal in that game. Now, I wasn't on the reason why they lost. There was some stuff on their side too. Offensive line, did not play great, and Jackson Arnold held onto the ball too long. But Auburn at 3-1. What were your kind of preseason expectations for this team?
I thought that a great deal of the success or lack thereof for Auburn would hinge on the Baylor game. I thought if they could get over that hump, playing a quality team on the road, and I do believe Baylor is a quality team, that they could achieve their goals. And everybody wants to win every game, but I thought that if they beat Baylor, 8, maybe 9 wins are attainable. And I still think that after the Oklahoma game, they played a really good Oklahoma team straight up with bad break after bad break. So there are some things to be optimistic about going forward, but just like we had that caveat with the Stephen Pearl hire, there's always a but, right? But Jackson Arnold's got to know when to throw the ball, and if he doesn't, that changes everything, because when he did let go of the ball Saturday, he had a pretty good game. He'll take 21-32. He didn't turn the ball over, but he's just got to learn how to count to 2.1 and let the ball go. And there was a knock on him at Oklahoma about the same thing. So I still feel good about what Auburn can accomplish, but that's the big if.
Yeah, I saw it a little bit the week before. I went to the South Alabama game, and there was second half, and Auburn did not play great in that second half, but there was an opportunity. Cam Coleman had one-on-one coverage, and I was like, you're playing South Alabama, just let it go. Let him go get the ball, because we saw against Oklahoma, you just put it in his area. He can go after and get it.
Oh, tremendous mismatch, yeah.
Unless the referees don't call a pass interference call, which we saw on Saturday. Now, so before we kind of jump more in your thoughts on it, what was on Monday morning on the game plan? What was kind of like the temperature of the callers, particularly the Auburn fans, on how they felt after the game?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I thought they might be more angry than they were, because they had every right to be. And there were some that were angry. And usually what I try to do on the show is try to, pull the thermostat down, because typically I will defend the officials. I think they have a very difficult job, and they make poor judgments just like the rest of us. But there was such an utter failure on so many levels in that game of officiating. I told our listeners right at the top of the show, I said, have at it, man. You can criticize all you want, because you had a failure at the pure judgment level. You had a failure at the replay level. You had a failure at the mechanics level with the pass interference, where the referee that should have made the call there was running away from the play, and it wasn't picked up by nearby officials. So you had a mechanics failure, and you had an interpretation failure apparently with the hideout play. So there was a failure at every level of officiating, and you can't excuse that away.
Mm-mm. The first one, that everybody was talking about, obviously the fumbles where Auburn returns to go at 7-0 early. I thought that was so big for a momentum standpoint. To go at 7-0 like that, you could really hurt the Oklahoma momentum as well with their offense. Did you think that was a catch in the fumble, or do you think it was the right call?
It was a catch and a fumble, and I can't. If I hedge a little bit on that, it's this: it was definitely a catch. It was definitely a catch, and for them to call that incomplete, I could not believe it. I think even hedging a little bit, I could not find any evidence in the 55 replays that they showed that was clear and convincing evidence to overturn it. So I was very confident at that point in time that was going to be an Auburn touchdown. And when they came back on replay and basically said, we didn't even get to the fumble part of it because we don't think he caught the ball, I thought that's just insane. And I know we're watching it in slow motion, but he caught the ball and he took 2 steps. I mean, that's a football move. To me, I don't understand what was seen there to call that an incompletion, but that was the beginning of the failure train for the officials that lasted all day long.
Yeah, if we only knew what we were about to be embark on
My
that game.
goodness. Yeah.
And my thing with it was this: I don't think there's enough there for you to overturn it. Like, it's so questionable, and so how it is. Like, even so, if they had called it the other way, they had called it incomplete. I have a hard time seeing how you could look at the replay and do it the other way. I just felt like you had to go with what you called on the field either way.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I thought it was going to come down to, was the receiver's backside on top of the defender or on the ground when the ball popped out? To me, that was the only question. And obviously the officials on the field thought it was a fumble. And of course, they're inclined to let the play out and let replay take care of it. But I did not see anything from any of the replays to make me think that his backside was on the ground where the fumble would have been negated, but they didn't even get to that. They had already ruled it incomplete before we even got to that part of the play. So I was very surprised.
Just looking at how the game played out, obviously said Auburn losing 24-17, 10 sacks, like 13 TFLs. The offensive line did not play great, but at the same time, as you mentioned, Jackson Arnold's got to get rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I also kind of put that on coaching too. Someone's got to tell him, get rid of the ball. But also, I kind of had a little deja vu to Gus Malzahn offense. It did it did not look like they had anybody like any kind of short slants, crossers to kind of bail him out when the pressure got to him early. Did you kind of see it that way too?
Yeah, and I'd have to go back and watch again to see on the different sacks, and I'm sure it's cut up on YouTube somewhere to be able to see all of them. But I do remember taking calls in the Gus Malzahn era, like, you've got to give him a quick outlet, whatever quarterback it may be. And so I think there was something there to that. And as you said, not all of the sacks were Jackson Arnold's fault by far. And I think Hugh Freeze said today, Monday, that maybe half of them, and then half of them were just utter failures on the part of the offensive line that Jackson couldn't do anything about. And that's another part of the story of that ball game. Surprising failure of the offensive line.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be a much improved group coming in this year.
Right.
And, also it just felt like they were giving up a sack or they were committing a penalty every play, because at the end there, when they had the ball pinned back deep, the offensive line, just the penalties just put them in so big of a hole. I mean, a 4th and 29, you're sitting there, there's just no way they can convert this. And then that was also on the offensive line, and be interesting because, again, they're going to have to go on another hostile environment, probably one that's even harder to play in at College Station this week.
Yeah, that's certainly a concern. And I tell you what, one of the commentators, I can't remember which one it was, one of the false starts, it was Xavier Chaplin, I believe, where he just basically just stood up in the stance.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the commentators said, do you think he's just tired? Do you think this offensive line is just tired? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's the defensive line that gets tired. The offensive line doesn't. But he may very well have been onto something, because a couple of plays later, the sack in the end zone, one guy rushed, Phillip, one guy. The other 3 defensive linemen played contain, and one guy rushed and got there so easily that maybe the offensive line was just flat exhausted. But if they are, something's wrong.
Yeah, I know all these questions sound like I'm piling on the offense. I think there was some good things with the passing game when Jackson Arnold with the run game. That was another thing with me. Jeremiah Cobb had played so well leading up to this. And look, I know you're going up against a much better defensive front, and maybe Hugh Freeze felt like, hey, we can't run like we should, but I think you should at least try it, at least keep them honest. And I think that would have helped. I mean, just the lack of the attempt to run the game with the run game with the running backs.
And I know against Oklahoma, it's going to be hard to do that, but Cobb did have a really good run, broke a bunch of tackles and got it into Oklahoma territory that helped set up some things. And I thought maybe they did get away from it. We had some of these same conversations on the show last year when Auburn lost some games and it looked like they got away from Jarquez Hunter too early. I don't know. Maybe you take the opponent into account and maybe you believe we're just not going to be able to run it on Oklahoma, but I don't know. It's definitely a fair question to ask.
Now, I will say this. I think going into the game, the Auburn secondary had kind of been criticized after the Baylor game, but then you look what Baylor's doing against everybody. I mean, Robertson's just shredding everybody through their passing game. But then also they had some struggle at South Alabama as well, the secondary did. I thought they played well. I know the numbers, you look at the final numbers, really won't show that. But I think they did a good job at keeping Mateer in the pocket, contained. He didn't really beat him too bad with his feet other than the touchdown was eventually the game winner. On that side of the ball, what was your big takeaway from the Auburn defense?
One, how well they tackled, and they have not tackled well all year. And I thought that was really going to be a problem for Auburn in that game, and they tackled extremely well. And the second thing that jumped out to me was the play of the linebackers. I thought that tight end Kanak, I think is his name. I thought he was going to have a monster day, and I thought the defense played really well enough to win. And I know I read where I think Mateer was 13 of his last 15, but boy, you get that kind of performance from the defense and you expect to win the game. And, with the calls, maybe they would have, I don't know, but if they'd have gotten just a little bit more from the offense, they would have anyway.
Then looking at the matchup, Texas A&M this Saturday at 2:30, again, they'll be there at College Station. A&M's a 6.5-point favorite. I'm looking at their first three games, A&M, they're giving up a lot of yards and points. On the ground, they're giving up 139 a game, through the air, 211. I really feel like this is a game, and Auburn has had success there at College Station since A&M's coming to the SEC. When you look at this matchup, what are going to be some key things for you that you're going to be looking out for?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a toss-up game. I'm very surprised the spread is what it is right now. I think Texas A&M is getting a lot of momentum from the Notre Dame game, which I don't want to take anything away from that. I mean, they found a way to win that game, but the same things jump out to me. I believe Auburn will be able to move the ball on the ground against A&M. I don't know if Marcel Reed will be able to have the same type of game that he had against Notre Dame. He's very, very talented, but sometimes he can spray it around. Sometimes he's just not that accurate. And if that Auburn defense that showed up in Norman shows up in College Station, I like Auburn to win the game. And I know that's a lot of ifs, but they won't play a defense probably all season long as good as Oklahoma's. And if they can protect Jackson Arnold a little bit better and he can get the ball out, I think they got a really good shot to go ahead and grab this road win over A&M, which would be the first ranked road win in a long time.
Yeah, it will be. There's another big game in the SEC. Alabama and Georgia playing on Saturday night. Ty Simpson versus Gunnar Stockton. I know that was a big question. You looked at Alabama and Georgia, you knew they're going to be good defensively. You knew the skill position players were good. We've seen Ty Simpson against Florida State. He did not play well. Now, he's played well since then. And then I think we kind of figured out what Gunnar Stockton's all about against Tennessee. And Lance, I'm just like this with Alabama, and I know they're feeling good after the last 3 weeks playing well. They have. But I'm kind of like with Kalen DeBoer in this program, until they can go on the road and beat somebody good, that's going to be something that looms over them. But when you look at this matchup, kind of like the question I asked you for Auburn A&M, but what are going to be some keys for you on this one?
Yeah, I think good Alabama against good Georgia. Good Alabama probably wins the game. I predicted at the beginning of the season that Alabama would beat Georgia. I don't necessarily think that anymore, because I just can't with any confidence think that Alabama is going to show up and play well on the road. They have not too many times. So I'm going to have to see them put a couple of good road performances together before I'm going to believe it. So I think if Georgia can get Alabama back on its heels the way that Florida State did, get some momentum, get Alabama out of an offensive rhythm, which they've had against lesser opponents over the last couple of games, I think it might be pretty hard. So I know Alabama has Georgia's number, and I think the spread's only 3.5 or something like that. But I just have to see Alabama show up on the road, which they haven't in a while.
With this game, we may answer the question I'm about to ask you: who's the best team in the SEC? Because we came in this year, Texas was anointed as the best team, not only in the SEC but college football. Arch has not, lived up to expectations. I mean, now against Sam Houston State, it looked great. We'll see what happens when they play a much better opponent down the road. Yeah. LSU looks great on defense, but now the offense is falling behind. It's reversed what it's been with Brian Kelly. I think Tennessee's still a player. I mean, I think they actually, we talk about pro sports when it really feels like then when UCLA made a trade. I think Tennessee got the better end of it so far.
Who could have predicted?
And Ole Miss is 2-0 in the conference. I know it's against Arkansas and Kentucky, but just we almost through the first month of the season. Who do you think is the best team in this conference?
Well, I agree with you. I think that Georgia-Tennessee game was played at a high level, really high level. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if they were the two best teams. You have to respect LSU until they lose, which they very well could in Oxford this Saturday. Then you start thinking about maybe Ole Miss being up there. They've done very well with a backup quarterback. Lane Kiffin's very gifted. And the team I never talk about enough that always proves me wrong is Missouri. Mm-hmm. And they've got a good win over South Carolina already. They are able to run the ball against anybody practically. So I think they've got a pretty good quarterback in their transfer from Penn State, Pribula. So I wouldn't count them out either. But I think 1-12 almost, anybody could beat anybody, and it wouldn't be that much of a surprise. It really wouldn't surprise me if, I don't think they play each other, but it wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina beat Texas. It wouldn't surprise me if Missouri beat Georgia. That it just wouldn't. So I think we're crunching the teams together, and there's less separation.
And as long as you've been doing this, Lance, when did you think we would get to a point where Vanderbilt was one of the most scariest teams in the conference?
I tell you, I thought they'd come back to the pack this year. I thought maybe the Pavia Magic was, kind of over and done, but they're a good team all around. I mean, they play good defense. They have a good system. They're talented at tight end. They've got a good running back. I mean, I just never thought that I would be at a place where you didn't want Vanderbilt on your schedule, but I'd rather play Vanderbilt than a couple other teams, right? I mean, I'd rather play a couple of other teams than Vanderbilt right now.
I know who wouldn't. That's Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is ready for Diego Pavia to be out of college football. He cannot get away from him. No but doubt. Diego keeps petitioning for more eligibility, so I guess he wants to be a full-time, a career college player.
That story got out last week, and I think that was more his attorney than him, because I think he posted that, I'm done, man. But he's going to walk away with a good chunk of money now, especially with this extra year. And yes, Hugh Freeze couldn't be happier to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. They play this year, and so does Alabama playing too as well. So he did go against State last year. We'll see how it's going to go this year. But Lance, it's been fun having you on the show. I hadn't done this in a while, but I always appreciate when you come on the show. Listeners, viewers, want to follow you online. Where can they find you? Where can they check out the game plan?
Yeah, so I got a Facebook page. It's The Game Plan with Lance Griffin, The Game Plan with Lance Griffin. Also on X at Eagle Lance, if you want to follow me on X, Eagle Lance, and things pop up every once in a while. But FM 100.1, AM 560, if you want to listen online, it's woofradio.net.
All right, everybody, go check out The Game Plan with Lance Griffin. It's a great listen every single day, and Lance, appreciate it, and look forward when you get to do this again.
Appreciate the timing. We've had fun.
Everybody, my second guest this week, we're going to take a look at the Texas A&M Aggies, who the Auburn Tigers will travel to face this Saturday, 2:30 on ESPN. And joining me is the Aggies Wire lead writer, also host of Texas A&M Aggies Live on the Voice of College Football. That is Cameron Ohnysty. And Cameron, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about the Aggies.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be pretty crucial for both teams. I think Auburn's obviously desperate to get a win. They feel like they kind of got hosed a little bit by the refs. They feel like they had all the chances to win that game. I mean, it was kind of, in my opinion, it was kind of close to the opening season game with Notre Dame and Miami, where Notre Dame kind of scored late, and then they kind of ran out of time, and Miami got to go down and score the winning field goal. And I think if they wouldn't have made some mistakes earlier, if they would have hit a couple of deep passes, if they really took advantage of some of the Oklahoma mishaps, and they probably could have pulled it out, but that's just life in the SEC.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I've said enough already on this show about the officiating, so we won't have to jump back on that one at all. So A&M's coming off the off week. I kind of look at that as a really good time. You're coming off a very emotional, great win over Notre Dame. So you always got to worry when you have a win like that in college football. Okay, will that win still affect you the next week? Will that get an off week? How do you feel about where this off week landed for Texas A&M?
Well, I think it was fantastic because, and we all kind of saw that if they could pull out that win over Notre Dame on the road, I mean, just program changing type of victory. Is probably the first signature win for Mike Elko. I mean, a lot of people say LSU was last season, but I wouldn't say that because that was at home. That was a night game. And yeah, the way they won, sure, it was based on coaching. Obviously, Marshall Reed coming in for Connor Wegman at the time. You can kind of define that as, he did a really good job there. But to pull it off against an 0-1 Notre Dame team that still had championship aspirations after losing a close one to Miami, as I mentioned at the top of the show, it's kind of interesting because we talked all offseason about Texas A&M's passing offense. And we were, it always hinged on starting quarterback Marshall Reed if he was going to take that next step. And so really to answer your question, yes, it came at a perfect time because he delivered. Obviously, there are two transfer wide receivers, which we could spend the entire show talking about. Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. Mario Craver, who was a freshman last year with Mississippi State, didn't do much, had some bright spots, was one of their best deep threats. I think scored a 50-plus yard touchdown against Georgia. I think that's really kind of came on the scene. And he's still leading the country in receiving right now, even after the bye week, after putting up 207 yards, a 72-yard touchdown, which really started A&M's offense off on a good note. After Notre Dame blocked a kick, got the first score. It was a back and forth contest, one of the most exciting games of the season so far, I would say. I think all of us were on the edge of our seats, and the fact they pulled it off the way they did. Obviously, Marshall Reed hitting Nate Bowenkirker, who I can never pronounce his last name, who I don't believe he has had a touchdown reception his entire football career, played at Nebraska beforehand for transferring to A&M. It was magical. And they did. One of the reasons why the bye week came at a perfect time was senior safety Bryce Anderson did go down with a kind of scary injury. He's actually okay. He is going to come back sometime this season. He's out this week, which that was assumed. But senior linebacker Scooby Williams, who also he made a crucial interception, kind of fell the wrong way, hurt his ankle. It was feared that he would miss time. Mike Elko said this, I think, actually today during the presser, that he's getting better every day. He could be good to go against Auburn. And Reuben Fatherly, who hasn't one of A&M's senior tackles, very versatile, can play right or left, has not played a game yet this season. He's been injured, still rehabbing from a lower body injury. He is expected to be available this week. So they've had really 2 full weeks to heal up as much. They knew that Bryce Anderson wasn't going to come back, probably not until I would say at least Florida or a little later, which is in a couple weeks. So, this is what they wanted. You go to 3-0, you get that first big win that really solidifies that early resume for your goals of getting to the college football playoff. So really, it couldn't have gotten any better for them, because I think that, like you said, it is one of those situations where you get a big win like that. If you get on a break, do you lose momentum? I don't know. I've seen that before, and I've seen that with A&M. I really have. I've also seen it the other way around a couple of years ago, actually, a year before I started covering them professionally. It was the Zach Calzada-led year in 2021. They lost to Mississippi State at home in very embarrassing fashion, and they ended up beating number 1 Alabama at home in one of the more historic games. So it kind of can go either way. But there is some fear that obviously Auburn, who, again, lost the way they did, Hugh Freeze, not, you can disagree with me, not on a hot seat, but I would say most of the fan base is really 50-50 with him right now. They're expecting more, especially with the way they kind of started the season, beating Baylor on the road. Obviously, Jackson Arnold's playing very well, has really solidified himself as a dual threat quarterback. Obviously, they have their issues, but they're looking to go into Kyle Field, which is going to be as loud as it can get. It's potentially going to be sold out with the way A&M is playing. Even if they had lost Notre Dame, I think this would be a near sold-out game. It's a 2:30 kickoff. A&M has not fared well in 2:30 kickoffs in the past for some reason. Some of them have been against Auburn, where I believe that Bo Nix year they did beat A&M in a very low-scoring game. I think they beat them again during the Kellen Mond. I'd have to look back, but they've also beaten Auburn a couple times at home, or at least once, I think. So they haven't fared very well against Auburn overall in Kyle Field in afternoon games. So there is some fear there. And obviously we're going to get to this, Auburn's elite wide receiver duo that is going to cause any cornerback issues and could lead to explosive plays, which A&M's defense has been problematic in that area.
In looking at the matchup, and the first thing that's going to sticks out to me, and I want to ask you about is, okay, Auburn's offensive line had some issues against Oklahoma. Everybody, the officiating was a part of it, but that's not the only reason why Auburn lost to Oklahoma. Their offensive line had issues. Part of that, though, the 10 sacks, was also Jackson Arnold holding on to the ball too long, but also the offensive line having issues. I believe Hugh Freeze said on Monday, half of them were probably offensive line issues. When you look at Texas A&M with their defensive front, do you see them being able to cause and have that kind of success against Auburn's offensive line?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think, you could go on social media, and I think a lot of people were saying, well, Cassius Howell, Texas A&M's senior edge, who had 3 consecutive sacks against Utah State, was pretty quiet against Notre Dame, which was expected. They do still have one of the better O-lines in the country, so I wasn't surprised that they weren't getting a ton of pressure against CJ Carr at that point. But yeah, I would say that they're licking their chops right now, because Auburn's O-line has underperformed, given the seniority, given the fact that I believe, every starter is at least a junior or like a redshirt senior. They have guys in their 5th years. So you expect more, right? You expect Jackson Arnold to get great pass protection, kind of like A&M's been getting for Marcel Reed. A&M's offensive line, on the flip side, has been overperforming in pass protection. We thought that maybe that would be the slight weakness. They'd be much better in run blocking. It's actually the reverse. Marcel Reed was barely touched against Notre Dame. They did not allow a sack. So in that regard, nobody's worrying about that. But if you are Auburn, if you're an Auburn fan, you do go into this matchup thinking, okay, is our offensive line that bad to the point where even A&M's respectable front, not elite front, I wouldn't call A&M's defensive line elite by any measure. I would say that they're ascending. I believe 17 tackles by the defensive tackles against Notre Dame. Albert Regis and DJ Hicks had fantastic games. They're 2 guys that if Auburn's interior is still problematic, that's not good for Arnold, who as our friend and site editor for Auburn Wire told me after the game, Arnold kind of holds on to the ball way too long, kind of like he's, holding a baby almost and trying not to let it drop. And that's a problem for any quarterback when you get interior pressure. You ask Tom Brady, for example, who was not mobile, you get outside pressure, he'll kill you, right? But you get that interior pressure. I think he always said when he played Vita Vea before he joined him at Tampa Bay, he hated him, right? Because, I mean, if that center whiffs, he's screwed, right? He can't get out. He's not, Marcel Reed can do that. He's much more athletic. Arnold has shown the ability to run. He's actually a very successful runner, but he's still not as athletic as Reed, where he can really just get outside of the pocket and make a play near the boundary. But I think the interior is what to watch. I think DJ Hicks, Albert Regis, Tyler Odianum, the Iowa State transfer, also had a very good game. These are going to be problems for Auburn's O-line because that's only going to open it up for Cassius Howe, who plays that jack position where he's moved around everywhere. And I think that Elko is going to be watching, obviously, the Oklahoma tape throughout the week and looking at how can we get Howe to the most favorable position to open him up and get inside pressure. We're going to try to obviously just rush him outside and see that those tackles can hold up. But, this is up to Auburn's O-line. I mean, I think that's really going to be determinant of the game because if you do give Jackson Arnold time, A&M secondary has been good, but Will Lee, their senior cornerback, who came into the season as, one of the best corners in the country, supposedly, he has struggled a lot. Des Ricks, their sophomore, who actually was one of their worst cornerbacks due to playing over 650 snaps last season during his first year, transfer from Alabama, has been one of the best cornerbacks in the country. He's not being targeted a lot, and Willie is obviously being targeted as much as possible because every team is trying to put their best receiver against him. And I think Hugh Freeze is probably going to look to do that again. To really answer your question, I think this is one of those matchups that if they get pressure early, it could be an issue. If they start to get some pressure late and kind of start to break, and the O-line starts to break down, I think Auburn still has a chance to pull this off. I just think that if you get in his face early, you cause him to get, I wouldn't say scared, but off kilter. That could be a big problem for the passing game.
Looking on the offensive side when A&M has the ball, I mean, going into the Oklahoma game, a lot of criticism been on the Auburn secondary. And you talked about the transfer wide receivers, Mario Craver, who against Notre Dame, 7 catches, 207, 1 touchdown. And as you said, still leads the country in receiving. And then you got Casey Concepcion, 4 catches, 82 yards. I mean, he has shown electricity with the ball in his hands. He had a return for a touchdown in the opener as well. So these are some very electric players. And also look at Le'Veon Moss. This was a guy last year. He was leading the team in rushing before he got hurt. I know trying to make his way get kind of back to that form as well. So A&M's got a lot of talented skill position players along with Marcel Reed, what he can do through the air and also on the run. Where do you see maybe A&M could attack Auburn?
So to start, I think they want to establish a run. I think Colin Klein always wants to establish the run. I think a lot of people in the opener against UTSA, their plan all offseason, Le'Veon Moss, obviously, I don't know if a lot of Auburn fans know that he tore both his ACL and his MCL last year against South Carolina. That was when A&M really just took a downturn. They were 7-1, finished 1-4, finished 8-5 overall. We entered the offseason not knowing Moss's progress. The fact that he has completely healed from that is actually incredible because we see, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. So DeMarvion Overshown, for example, I think he had the same injury. It's taking him a while to get back. I don't think he's going to be back till maybe Thanksgiving. So the fact that Le'Veon Moss was running and working out throughout the summer was a miracle in a way. But Mike Elko has been one of the smarter coaches in terms of protecting his players. And him and Klein had this plan all along, is that in the opener, we're going to give him 3 to 4 carries. That's what he got, 3 carries. And that was strategic. They wanted to get Marcel Reed comfortable in the pocket, so they passed more. And to success. I mean, he threw for a career-high 4 touchdowns. He got in a rhythm that lasted throughout going into the Notre Dame game because, you look at Marcel Reed's line against Notre Dame, it was 17 for 37. Not an accurate day, but the whole plan overall was explosive plays. That was the whole point, is like, we don't care how accurate you are. We need explosive plays to get down the field and match their scoring efforts, which they did ad nauseum. I mean, it never stopped, right? I'd have to look back, but they didn't stop this offense much outside of a couple missed throws here and there. But he was targeting Mario Craver for, because Craver is the most explosive player maybe in college football right now with the ball in his hands, and Casey Concepcion is equal to that. And one of the best reception guys. I mean, he's all of, I think, 6 feet, and his vertical on one of the throws, it was a throw that reached kind of layered to get over I think it was the linebacker in coverage. It was perfect. And he jumped as high as you could to reel it in. I mean, he's a possession guy. He's a speed guy. He's a quickness guy. This is probably really just Auburn outside of maybe some of USC's receivers are the most elite pass catchers in the country, in my humble opinion. There's some other teams that could vie for that spot. But overall, I think that if they can average 5 to 6 yards per carry and they can get it going early, I don't know what the plan is per se in terms of the running back room, because Moss only really led the team. I'd have to look back. I think Ruben Owens, Amari Daniels only got like 2 or 3 carries. He had 20 carries overall for 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was their goal line guy. I think they're going to try to divvy it up a little bit to get this running game going. If they can't, though, they trust Marcel Reed to get it going. They trust this wide receiver core. Compared to last year, if they couldn't get Le'Veon Moss going, that's probably it, right? They just didn't have the horses. They didn't have the quickness at wide receiver to get it done. And now they can win the game just by passing. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be tough. I mean, Auburn's secondary is above average, I would say. I mean, I don't know. You kind of have to tell me. I haven't watched them a ton this year. I'm going to watch them more, obviously, at the end of the week. But I would have to say that Notre Dame's secondary came in to the season as one of the best in the country. They were up there with Texas and I think Ohio State. I mean, PFF praised them as maybe the best. And again, Marcel Reed tore him up for 360 yards. So I don't think A&M's offense, and especially Colin Klein, are scared of anybody ahead in their schedule. I think maybe Florida is going to be a little tougher. Their defense, despite being 1-3, is pretty damn good. But yeah, to answer your question again, they're going to try to run the ball every game, right? And I think they're going to do the same, because if you can average at least 5 yards per carry, it's going to make it easier to get those chunk games to the air. It's going to allow Mario Craver to have that same maybe not the same production he had against Notre Dame, but to really destroy the middle of the field and really expose the secondary early. And of course, get Marcel Reed in a groove, because if he's in a groove and if he's confident, A&M's one of the best offenses in the country right now.
You know, we talked about this a little bit off the air. You know, this would be my final question for ask for your final thoughts on the game. Yeah. But the Cam Coleman thing, and I know Mike Elko talked about him a little bit on Monday, talking about defending Cam Coleman. And Cam Coleman had a big day last year, and I don't think we're going to get multiple overtimes this time around. Who knows? You never know.
Hope not.
Because sometimes you're sitting, you got to write about these games. You're like, okay, let's get
I don't even want to go back to that game. And I remember afterwards, it was like, well, A&M still has a chance to get to the SC championship game. I was like, I don't care. They should have won that game.
But just looking at, and then you brought up Singleton, and just what is going to be, in your opinion? You kind of told me a little bit off air. We talked about this, but the strategy of going up against Cam Coleman.
I think they're going to have to bracket him. I think because I saw there were a couple plays. He had a double move against one of Oklahoma's better cornerbacks and just blew past him. I mean, this is why, obviously, I think Auburn fans remember Cam Coleman was an A&M commit for a while until he wasn't. So A&M fans are still kind of hung up on that, because if you kind of look at the offense now, you have Cam Coleman at X and you have Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, you have a championship level offense, but that's here nor there. I mean, that doesn't matter now. But you got to trust Mike Elko. He has a background in the secondary. I mean, he's made his bones as a defensive coordinator, developing safeties, cornerbacks who are still playing in the NFL today with various teams. So he understands the challenge. Like, he's not going to go into this game and just allow him to shred us, and then we'll focus on everybody else, because we really can't do much against him. I think you bracket him first. You really take him out of the game early. You make Jackson Arnold look for somebody else. They've got 2 other very good receivers who have played very well this season, but they don't have the explosiveness that Cam Coleman, believe he caught a ball like at the 50-yard line or the goal line throw. So it's he can do that. He can really just kill you on one play. So A&M can't do that this game. They can't have that happen against Notre Dame. I think it was Eli Raridan, their tight end, who we did Michael Chen, obviously you and I know for Fighting Irish Wire. He was on our show last week, and I kind of joked with him. I said, well, do you think Eli Raridan's going to have a big game? He said, probably not. I said, well, I bet he leads them in receiving. He led them in receiving because A&M has that problem against these bigger bodies, either a tight end, killing you in the seam. I'll say this. So it is going to be interesting how Hugh Freeze kind of uses Cam Coleman. If I was him, if you wanted to really expose A&M, I'd kind of shift him inside. I'd put him in the seam. I'd put him against Texas A&M's linebacker Torian York, who, as good as he's been, he struggled immensely in coverage against Notre Dame. And I mean, if you were going to put him on anybody, I'd put him on against Torian York because we don't know if Scooby One's going to play. That would put linebacker Damian Sanford, who's not the best cover guy. He's more of a pass rusher, run defender. So it's going to be interesting how he kind of maneuvers him because right now, and as we discussed pre-show, I still think they're going to put him against Will Lee to start the game. Will Lee is up to take the challenge, but the numbers don't lie. Will Lee has struggled throughout the season. I think he allowed at least 5 receptions or 3 or 4 receptions at Utah State's receiving core and a touchdown. He did have some good plays against Notre Dame. He had a swat at the goal line that actually prevented a touchdown. So he stepped it up, but still in coverage on the boundary against most of the number 1 guys, he has struggled. So I do think they're going to try to put him against Lee as much as possible, but it's one of those situations where Elko's going to have to decide. Do we think that Cam Coleman is going to destroy the game? Because you look back at last year, he was a younger player, but he had that long touchdown. He really gave him a ton of momentum. A&M did come back in that game after trailing 21-0. Granted, that was a worse Auburn team overall, but they can't get in a hole again. They can't, and especially at home, they can't allow, Auburn to take the opening kickoff and just dink and dunk and then explosive play and then score. And then now you have to play catch up. They can't do that anymore. If they do that, I'd give A&M a very good chance to win this game. But if they let Auburn hang around because of explosive play, specifically because of Coleman just making those big catches down the field, it could be a shocker. And that's mainly what I'm worried about. I do think that, he's looking at the entire offense. They have playmakers outside of Coleman, obviously, like you mentioned. But it is one of those X factor games. And I think Coleman, I'm not saying there's like a vengeance thing. He never played a snap for A&M, but there is a thing about maybe he saw stuff on social media from A&M fans, as when a guy decommits or something, there's a lot of hate that comes his way. Maybe that's going to fuel him like it did against them last year. I don't know. I just think that this is a very, very important game for both teams. I think that A&M is going to come out very, very confident and motivated because I think they know that if you come out slow after a bye week, it ain't good. It's not going to be good for you because the other team is desperate. I would say Auburn is desperate right now because they can't, they're 3-1 right now. It's 3-2. Schedule's still tough. 4-2, then 4-3. It's one of those seasons where you just don't want it to keep ticking down to then 8-4, and then you're looking at Hugh Freeze going, "Come on, man! When is it going to happen? When are we going to be a 10-win team? When are we going to make the college football playoffs?" So, I think it's going to be one of the better games of the weekend overall, and I think that it's going to be much closer than some people think. But I would still give A&M an edge here just because they played very well at Kyle Field. And I think that compared to even last year, Marcel Reed is just a completely different player. And it has to fall on his feet to make a play. A&M fans trust him now completely. Opposed to last year, I think it was a little 50-50.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. And on the Auburn side, they do need to win. They're off next week, and then you got Georgia coming in. So
so it just doesn't get easier.
Yeah. Life in the SEC,
yeah.
And Auburn got Vanderbilt on the schedule coming up this year too. So of course, that's not an easy game as it used to be.
No. I mean,
But
we've talked about Vanderbilt. I mean, I was talking about him with a couple other guys, and Cam Torres, my podcast host, and I keep saying, are they for real? Are they for real? Because South Carolina, I don't think is good. I think South Carolina it was very overrated, and I think when they beat Virginia Tech, and then you kind of see what Virginia Tech became, you kind of went, okay, they may be fraudulent, but I don't know. I mean, it's a very well balanced team, so. Like you said, this is the SEC now. It's like everybody, except for Kentucky, I think, but everybody is competing in a way. But I will say this: Texas is probably very lucky going this weekend, hearing that DJ Lagway is in a boot right now. So,
yeah, yeah. Like I said, life in SEC, and this has been fun, Cameron, having you on talking all things.
man.
Aggies. Getting to know this team a little bit better, having you on the show. But for the listeners, viewers want to catch you online, where can they find you?
So on X, I'm not extremely active on X much. I think it just being a writer and covering this team, and then everything else up between, I try my best. But at Cameron Ohnysty, obviously at Aggies Wire. With Auburn Wire, we do daily content. We're covering every sport. I think it's just a way to kind of really sell people's that compared to everybody else, even some beat writers in a way. We're not doing just specific articles every once in a while. It's every type of update. I just put an injury update about an hour ago. So you can find me there. And then obviously at the beginning of the show, we do our show with Voice of College Football, Texas A&M Aggies Live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. So you can always catch us there if you want to hear me and my podcast. So Cam and just kind of talk about what's going on, and we talk for an hour, and then hopefully we're going to have Taylor on the show on Tuesday night, and that will be fun to talk more about Auburn. So
absolutely. Again, it's going to be a big matchup, and Cameron, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, and hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
No, for sure. Yeah, we might. It's who knows what the SC championship will look like at this point. I couldn't even tell you. So
could be Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. Who knows?
Oh, God. I actually love that, to be honest with you. It'd be hilarious.
There you go. Well, anyways, thanks again, Cameron.
Yeah, you got it, man.
All right. Once again, thanks to both Lance and Cameron for coming on the show this week for Lance, talk all things the Oklahoma game. Bruce Pearl is still, getting over that. Bruce Pearl has retired from Auburn basketball. And then Cameron, of course, previewing the Auburn-Texas A&M game for this week. All right, so let's look up into some comments. I went on social media once again. I did wait 24 hours after Auburn lost to just kind of see how people were feeling about the loss and the team overall with it. Here's from Facebook, Kenton Hamilton. Honestly, I genuinely believe Auburn has 10-win talent, but talent only goes so far when there's no discipline, no drive, no coaching. I do think Hugh is the biggest problem, but I also think it's above and below him. The entire football culture in Auburn needs to change. Elizabeth Ragland, Hugh was great. Ken Maddox, I expected Auburn to lose that game. Sucked that the way it was lost and didn't expect that. I just expected Oklahoma to play with recklessness to get at Jackson. 10 sacks, say they did. Time will tell if Oklahoma is really good or if AU is just mid and Oklahoma is mid as well and got home cooking. Because now people have to either say Oklahoma is top 10 and squeeze past a really good Auburn team, or Auburn is horrible and Oklahoma just got past them. All right, Craig McMichael says quarterback throwing still seems to be a challenge. Yeah, let go of the ball. I mean, like I said, some of the sack issues were offensive line related, but also Jackson Arnold's got to let go of the ball. He has got to get rid of it, especially when you're going up against a team that is going to constantly give you pressure. So my opinion for Auburn and Texas A&M for this Saturday, I am going to – people going to think you're just a straight-up Auburn homer. I say Auburn beats Texas A&M on Saturday. I do think the Cam Coleman matchup is going to be a problem for A&M. I think Auburn is going to be able to move the ball in this game a lot easier than they did against Oklahoma. I don't think Texas A&M is near as good defensively as the Sooners. So I do believe for Auburn, they will be able to run the ball if they can commit to it. with Jeremiah Cobb, and I do think there's going to be some plays to be had in the passing game for Auburn against A&M. Now, when Auburn's on defense, can they play defense like that Oklahoma? If they do, they're going to win this game by a touchdown or two. But A&M's got some playmakers. Marcel Reed is another mobile quarterback. He's not as accurate as John Mateer, but he's got some weapons on the outside too as well. I say Auburn will win this game 31-20. Now, let's go 31-24. I think it'll be a close game. Close game. Auburn wins 31-24. Looking at the rest of the SEC slate, you have Notre Dame at Arkansas. Arkansas with that big lead to Memphis. And Notre Dame, they're looking to get a victory. So I will go Notre Dame. They can't afford any losses if they're going to get to the college football playoff. LSU at Ole Miss. I'm going to go with LSU. I think their defenses was going to be the story in this one with against Ole Miss. Tennessee and Mississippi State. Mississippi State is playing better, but Tennessee, I think, is a player in the title race. Kentucky, South Carolina. South Carolina should win that. Kentucky's the worst team in the conference. And then finally, Alabama at Georgia. Georgia's 2.5-point favorite. I'm just going to Georgia because they're at home, and until Kalen DeBoer can beat somebody good on the road, I'm just not going to buy it that it can happen. So that is my thoughts on this weekend. Again, thank you for checking out the show. I know last week we split up into two. We did this one this week. There's a reason for that. I am going out of town for the weekend. I will be watching Auburn A&M. Don't worry. I'll be in front of the TV watching that game. Be ready to break it all down for you guys next week on the pod. But so that's going to be like an early Thursday morning thing. So I'm going to be getting out of town. So let's just put it all together as one pod this week. I guess I need to run a poll. Which do you prefer? 2 separate or 1? So I don't know. We'll see about that, if what kind of feedback I get. But anyways, I appreciate you checking out the show. Plan on having a Packers podcast out later this week. Also, go check out the Wiregrass High School Football Report. That is out with Headland head coach Ethan Holland. Had a great time talking to him on Sunday night. That came out on Monday. Please go check that out as well. No Dothan Wolves this Friday night. No Jed Kennedy coach show this week because the Dothan Wolves are off. We'll be back with that stuff next week. Anyways, I hope everybody has a great week. And we'll talk to you next week here on the Phillip Jordan Show, talking all things Auburn.